Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska reminds us about the proper role of the judicial branch and his personal connection to the pro-life movement. Senator Sasse is a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and took part in the recent hearings for Supreme Court nominee Judge Brett Kavanaugh. We spoke to Sasse last week before news broke about misconduct allegations facing Judge Kavanaugh. Senator, welcome to the program.
Thank you for the invitation.
You gave a bit of a civics lesson during the Kavanaugh hearings, saying we need Schoolhouse rock back. What did you mean by that?
Our founders were smart in that they decided to divide power. They didn't want there to be a consolidation of power because the most important things in American life happen by love and by persuasion and by neighborliness, not by compulsion and prohibition and governments. And so they divided power among a legislative, an executive, and a judicial branch. And right now you see so much collapsing of those distinctions such that many of the American people, and definitely a lot of political activists in Washington, D.C., want judges to be super legislators and to try to decree what the laws should be. That's not what our founders wanted. It's not what we should want. We should want judges who understand why they put on a black robe every morning. They should have an understanding of the judicial role and of judicial modesty. And so we need Schoolhouse rock back.
And Senator, when you questioned Kavanaugh in the hearing, you asked him about the nature of Supreme Court precedent and the principles of stare decisis. What did you learn about the judge from that exchange?
Well, I was heartened by what Kavanaugh had to say there because he admitted that the Supreme Court makes mistakes. We all know that to be true. Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, one of the worst decisions in the history of the Supreme Court, one of the lowest moments in U.S. history, a blatantly racist decision, wasn't overturned until Brown v. Board of Education in 1954. For those 58 years, there was really bad law of the land because of bad Supreme Court precedent. And so it was good to hear Kavanaugh admit that precedent doesn't mean we pretend the Supreme Court is always right, never wrong, and should never be reconsidered. And so even though Judge Kavanaugh wouldn't go anywhere near pro-life issues or near Roe v. Wade, I was heartened to hear him admit that the Supreme Court makes mistakes because in my view, and again, I'm not quoting Kavanaugh here because he wouldn't go near current controversies, but in my view, one of the bad laws in U.S. history, or one of the bad Supreme Court decisions, is Roe v. Wade. And so I serve in a political branch, and so I want to tell the American people and represent the views of Nebraskans that when I look at sonogram imagery, I see a baby there. And so I want us to have a pro-life future in this country. Again, Kavanaugh wouldn't go near that, but I'm glad that he would admit that the Supreme Court makes mistakes, and I think that's heartening for those of us who care about the pro-life cause. But the bigger point as a pro-lifer is not chiefly legislation or Supreme Court decisions, it's loving your neighbor. The most powerful thing the pro-life movement has is a whole bunch of volunteers who love their neighbor and who go down and volunteer at the Crisis Pregnancy Center, as my wife has for so much of our marriage, and try to take a woman who's in a situation with a pregnancy that she didn't anticipate and didn't plan for, and try to love her and try to love her baby and be a good neighbor. That's the most important thing we have in this movement.
Absolutely. That is a beautiful witness. The pro-life movement is the pro-love movement. Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.